When Volvo first introduced the EX30 crossover to the world roughly 2 years ago, it marked the return of a small, spunky, and affordable Volvo vehicle in the States, something that we haven't seen since the discontinuation of the old C30 hot hatch over a decade ago. Now, of course, the EX30 launched with some pretty impressive specs. All-electric range was up to 260 miles, and the top trim is making over 400 horsepower, making this vehicle the quickest accelerating car that Volvo has ever offered in the States. Now, for 2026, Volvo is expanding the trim lineup of the EX30 to include 2 new models, a more affordable single-motor rear-drive variant, and of course this range topper here, the first ever electrified cross-country Volvo known as the EX30 Cross Country. It comes standard with that dual-motor powertrain, and of course Volvo has lifted up the suspension, offered available all-terrain tires, and given this thing a unique look on the outside as well as the inside. So as you can see, this week we are testing out this fully loaded 2026 EX30 Cross Country, and the big question I went answered: has Volvo created the perfect small electric adventure SUV for enthusiasts? Stay tuned to find out. Now, before we start talking about the unique styling details of this cross-country variant of the EX30, let me first start by popping the hood and showing you guys if this vehicle has a front trunk storage space. Now, like some of the other EVs, thankfully the small EX30 does have a front trunk storage space. However, it's a lot smaller versus Volvo's other electric cars. Now, as you can see, you're going to find a lot of plastic coverings underneath the hood. However, if you lift up this little cover, you can see there's around 0.25 cubic feet of storage space, along with these little cute Easter eggs that show a moose, and it shows the EX30 driving toward the moose, I guess somewhere in the Swedish mountains or Swedish lands and whatnot. But since we're underneath here, let's go ahead and talk about the powertrain specs. Now, this vehicle is built off of the SEA architecture. It's a platform that it actually borrows from Geely. And this architecture basically runs with a 69 kilowatt hour battery pack. Around 64 of it is usable. And for 2026, like I said earlier, Volvo has expanded the options to include a single motor rear drive variant offering around 268 horsepower. This model, however, the Cross Country, comes standard with the dual motor powertrain, which means we have an electric motor in the front and the rear. The rear electric motor delivers around 268 horsepower and the front electric motor delivers on 154 horsepower for a combined output of 422 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. It all goes out through a single speed reduction gear transmission, and Volvo claims the 0 to 60 time for this model is still under 3.5 seconds with a top speed of around 110 miles an hour. So not the fastest Volvo ever offered, but definitely one of the quickest accelerating Volvos ever offered. The company claims with the 69 kilowatt hour battery pack, unfortunately, range does drop to 227 miles for the cross country. That's a pretty significant drop versus the 253 that you get for the regular EX30 with dual motor all-wheel drive. Now, so surprisingly, this vehicle can tow up to 2,000 pounds, and this car, as it sits, weighs in at around 4,100 pounds. It actually weighs only around 30 to 50 pounds more versus the regular EX30, so you're not really paying a penalty there in weight for the additional hardware that the cross-country variant gives you. But let's go ahead and close up the hood here and talk about the exterior styling. Now, unlike the one that I tested last year, which was painted in a super bright color called moss yellow, the car literally gave me Pikachu vibes. This is sand dune pearl. I think it's actually a really great color. Volvo also offers it on the regular EX30. It really makes this car look a little bit more tough, a little more aggressive. It's not as in your face as that bright yellow that I tested before, and I have to say this car definitely looks better in this particular color. Now, all EX30s come with their latest Thor's Hammer LED headlights, full LED headlights that have an LED daytime running light and turn signal, LED projectors for the low and high beam. And you can see the front end of the Cross Country EX30 has a unique look with this kind of unpainted plastic area in the makeshift grille that also has topography built in. Those coordinates there are for the highest mountain peak in Sweden. And it definitely gives it a unique look and vibe. There are some functional openings there below the headlights and some active grille shutters down there. You can see the front splitter has almost like a metallic skid plate look. If you look underneath the car, Volvo actually says there are skid plates front and rear. And in general, the company gave this car a 0.75 inch suspension lift. So it's not really that much of a suspension lift, but I have to say it definitely improves the look. And this car has a total of 7.7 inches of ground clearance versus 7 inches that you get in the regular EX30. Now moving around the side profile, this car is deceptively small. And that's what's kind of unique about the EX30. It's one of the smallest electric crossovers you can buy, with an overall length of 166.7 and a 104.3 inch wheelbase. This is about the same size as something like a Volkswagen Golf GTI and roughly 8 to 10 inches shorter versus most of its rivals. So if you want a small car, this is small. In fact, it's actually around 1.5 inches shorter than the old C30 hot hatch. However, this car is around 3 inches wider and 2 inches taller. So it's going to give you more interior space, obviously. Now looking at the wheels, my test car for an extra $3,500 has an all-terrain 18-inch wheel and tire package. That's definitely a pricey option. I think Volvo should have made it standard as opposed to charging $3,500 extra for it. It's riding on a 235 by 55 R18 Cooper Discovery all-terrain tire. The 18-inch wheels basically look the same as the standard 19, so just an inch smaller. They do have kind of like an aerodynamic cover over them for aerodynamics, obviously, and I think the wheel and tire package looks good. Keep in mind they are 10 millimeters narrower versus the 19-inch wheels that you get on the EX30. Brake rotors are kind of large, 13.8 at the front, 13.1 at the rear. All independent suspension, like I said earlier, but the dampers have been tuned to be softer for more off-road duties, and you can see lots of additional cladding. There's tasteful, actually, cladding along the wheel arch trim, along the side sill also it's a little bit more aggressive. But in general, I really like the way this car looks as a cross-country model, especially when you go for those all-terrain tires. Now, it also comes standard with that black two-tone roof, and only being offered as an ultra trim, you do have a panoramic glass roof that doesn't open up to vent air, which would be nice. There's not even a retractable shade. You do have power folding mirrors that are black painted. The ultra trim also comes with a full 360 camera, which is a nice touch. And then as you follow me over to the back part of the vehicle, you can see I really like the boxy squared off proportions of this car. It's just funky, it's just weird, but it's very Volvo. It gives me the vibes of a Swedish car company like Volvo, of course. Now the charge port door is located here on the rear driver's side quarter panel, and as you can see, this car still comes with the J1772 CCS combo plug. This vehicle can accept up to 153 kilowatts on a DC fast charger, allowing you to go from 10 to 80% in around 28 minutes. Volvo also includes a NACS Tesla adapter, so you can go to a Tesla charging station with the vehicle, and it has an 11 kilowatt onboard charger. So roughly it's going to take around 8 hours to charge this vehicle at your home on a level 2, so kind of keep that in mind. I don't love these plastic look covers here. They kind of are a little finicky if you don't put them on in the right manner. As you can see, there we go. You have to put the bottom one in first, but close that off. I appreciate how it's a manual door, so it keeps things from breaking, like some competitors putting an electronic opening door. Now coming over to the rear, you can see the design is pretty similar to the regular EX30, aside from this big black panel that goes across the back of the tailgate with Volvo spelled out the back. There's still the EX30 twin motor performance. I'm surprised there's not like a cross-country badge back here. Instead, you're gonna find the cross-country badge built into the rear bumper, which I actually think is a nice touch with more of that silver metallic trim. I love the way this car looks at the rear with its wide-looking all-terrain tires. It just looks like a little mountain goat type of vehicle. Very Subaru Crosstrek meets like modern design, although Subaru now just came out with the Uncharted, which I would actually view as a competitor for this car. I also love the typical look for the Volvo taillights. It has kind of like a stacked design, full LEDs with the Volvo script are like illuminated into the actual side of the taillight. The taillights themselves are full LED, like I said. There's a subtle little spoiler here with your integrated third brake light, a small little rear wiper that sits at the bottom there, and then the button to open up the tailgate is right here, right above the L. If you push that, a power liftgate's included, and this is kind of where the EX30's small size does go against you, because this vehicle only offers 12.5 cubic feet of storage space back here. 12.5 is tiny, and it actually has a little bit less storage space versus the old C30 back in the day. You do have at least a pretty decent underfloor storage area, as you can see. You're gonna find a first aid kit here, your mobile charger that's included with the vehicle as well, which is a nice touch. If you wanna fold down the seats, there's surprisingly no lever to do so back here. You do have an old-fashioned 12-volt power outlet back here, but Volvo says when you fold down the seats, it expands the cargo to around 27 cubic feet or 27.8 cubic feet of storage space, which is certainly usable, but just keep in mind a lot of the bigger competitors are going to offer probably double that cargo space, so there is a compromise to be made here with a vehicle that's this small. So Volvo did a great job on the exterior design for the EX30 Cross Country, but what about the interior before we get inside? However, let me go ahead and show you guys what the key situation looks like. Now, as you can see, like so many other EVs, Volvo sent me this car with just a basically electronic key card here, as you can see here. The previous EX30 that I tested, a regular one, had like an actual physical fob without any buttons. Volvo basically said that they really want you to use their phone as a key functionality, which sadly I don't have access to it, but because of the physical key card, some of the features that the regular EX30 I had with the actual fob have been disabled, or at least they're not working. Like for example, when I want to lock or unlock the car, I actually have to stick the key on this little pillar here. That's what unlocks the car. If I want to lock the car, I have to do it again. Again, if you have your phone as a key activated for this vehicle, you basically can access the car to lock and unlock it as you approach and walk away from the car, which is a nice touch. But as you can see, still traditional door handles, which I very much appreciate. The mirrors, like I said earlier, power fold. I also love that kind of frameless look to them. It just looks very modern and sophisticated. And as you open up the door, you can see here, the interior of my test car is really unique looking. This is a color combo that wasn't available last year, but now you can get it on the regular EX30 as well. This is kind of a pixel, or it's a pine pixel, or pixel pine combination of their Nordico and like this cloth wool blend material. It's like a grayish green color, which looks good with the sand dune color as well. On the outside, the leather portion at the bottom is their synthetic Nordico leather. The seats are heated for the driver and the passenger, and they come with like a 10-way power adjustment via this little rotary control knob here, which is kind of interesting how that functions. You do have a memory function for the driver's seat. However, if you're looking for cooled seats, that is not offered on the EX30. Again, this is their smallest, most affordable model, so you have to kind of make some cuts there. The interior definitely has a unique vibe to it. You can see the upper door panel material is covered in a recycled material, and this is slightly padded, but it also feels a little bit cheap if I'm being honest. However, I love some of the detailing that they put here. For example, this plastic down here has a textured look to it, which again, it feels cheap when you touch it, but it looks cool. I love the kind of green knit material on the inside of the door pocket. This, however, is nice and padded where you rest your elbow, and there's real metal trim here for the door handles. They feel nice and sturdy. That's definitely a plus as opposed to those silly electronic digital latches you might find on some competitors. But again, you do have some reminders that this is a cheap car or a more affordable car, but at the same time with this kind of metallic badging here and this really interesting textured weave material here for the door panels and on the dash, it definitely gives this interior a unique vibe to it when you first open up the door. Now, stepping inside, with that extra 0.2 or 0.75 inches of ground clearance, you have a slightly easier step-in height, but it's not as high as some other vehicles. As I shut the door has a really solid sounding thunk actually, which again, this is built off of an SEA architecture from Geely, so it's technically a Chinese company. Remember, Volvo is owned partially by Geely. So that's where they get some of their technology and their platforms. Now, as you can see, the interior here is very minimalistic, and that's kind of what Swedish brands like Volvo are known for. At the same time, it kind of reminds you a little bit of like a Tesla, for example, like the key fob here, or this little key card. If I try to actually start the vehicle up and drive it, actually it's deciding to work now. Every other time it's been telling me, oh, there we go. It's been telling me place key to start there. So it lets me put it into drive, but then when I try to accelerate, it will put itself back into park. And that's because I need to put the key right here. Now that only does that when you have that digital key card there. Other times when you have your phone, again, it should be able to work. But basically when you want to start the vehicle up, you put your foot on the brake, put it into drive, you'll hear the chime start up, and that's how you start and stop this vehicle. There's no buttons to push, like a push button start, for example. That's very similar to what Tesla does and so many other EVs like GM does as well. So that in general will remind you of that if you guys especially are coming from a Tesla vehicle. Now, everything is being controlled via this 12.4-inch display. Let me first turn on the heated seat and heated steering wheel. But let's go ahead and talk about the interior materials first. Now, as I mentioned earlier, slightly padded soft touch injection molded plastic. It carries over here to this upper portion of the dash, as well as this portion. Same with that texturized recycled look trim here, which I think looks really good, especially when you combine it with the kind of details that this car has. I also like the steering wheel. It's a squircle design with a flat bottom and flat top. It has a manual tilt and telescoping arrangement. However, I do wish that the steering wheel came down a little bit more. This is the lowest position that it goes in. I actually want it to go a little bit lower. No digital display behind the steering wheel, as you can see. Instead, it's got this little camera that's constantly watching your face. And let me tell you guys, this car will constantly beep at you or tell you you need to keep your eyes on the road, but there are times where, again, I have to look over to the middle to see my information. So that is, I think, a little too hypersensitive. There's a really nice Harman Kardon stereo system that's included with the Plus trim. It sounds really good. If you guys are an audiophile, you're gonna appreciate that. I also really like the way these vents look with this kind of interesting tab, like a plastic tab that you use to adjust the airflow. Again, very traditional in the sense where it's not some digital vent that you have to go through the screen, but there's also no physical buttons really on this car. Only on the steering wheel. You can see there's your volume up, your skip forward and back for the audio, or for your radio controls. Your pilot assist controls are here, where you can adjust the distance and set the cruise control. You basically push down on that to go into cruise control, which is similar to what Tesla does. And then if I put the vehicle into reverse, you can see there's your full 360 camera that's standard on the Ultra trim that only is available on the cross country. It has distance markers, trajectory, cross traffic braking, automatic parallel parking assist. The quality and resolution also looks fantastic. And the screen size, I think, is a good size. It's not overwhelming, but it's also still very modern and sophisticated. Now, there's the embedded Google GPS, which is very quick and snappy, easy to use. Volvo's been, again, improving their technology greatly. You can even access the camera system from over there really quick. Going to here, you can access some of your different applications. You can go to the Google Play Store and, of course, and download even more apps if you'd prefer. It finally has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. My phone's not connected now, though, because it'll mess up the audio. Climate functions are all located in the screen where you can adjust your climate there. You can also push that, and you can bring up like a full climate menu. It does have a built-in air purifier. It tells you how much or what the air quality is like in here as well. You can even set up a timer to where you can start the vehicle, or you can tell the vehicle to activate the climate control early before you even get into the car. So those are all features that people really appreciate. You can see push the car icon there. It'll allow you to access some quick controls from the rain sensing wipers, although you can't turn those off. You can only adjust the sensitivity from low, medium, and high. I don't like how you can't turn it off. There's where you can adjust your mirrors. You adjust them via the steering wheel controls, and you can also fold them there. Your ambience, this is a really great feature where you can basically create your own little, like, I guess, area or here, a cocoon where you can, play some music. It even changes the ambient lighting. It puts a really cool graphic on the screen, and it just makes this cabin feel really special and modern. So I appreciate that. At the same time, I wish that Volvo had included the ambient lighting in the actual vents where they illuminated. They're only here like on the actual dash there, and you can hear it's playing music, which is very soothing. You're in a forest bath here. So really appreciate that feature. It's pretty similar to the regular EX30 when I tested it. You can see there's your one pedal drive feature. You can turn it off between off, low, and high. You can adjust your driver assistance settings there. You can go over here to the car status, go to your actual settings, and adjust a few things. Driving, this is where you adjust your driver assistance stuff, and you can also change between 3 different drive modes: range, standard, and performance. We'll try them out later on. During the driving scene, you can even adjust your steering feel, of course, or if you'd like, you can access the driving stuff from here where there's a quick, or I'm sorry, where did it go? It's not here, it's right here. If you go to your home display here, if I put it into drive, it should pop up there, drive modes. That's how you can access it there quickly. But when you're in park, it goes to the glove box, which, as you can see, push that and a hidden glove box opens up. You expect it to be here, but it's actually here in the center, which is kind of cool. But in general here, it's definitely very unique, but everything is controlled via this screen, so that takes a little bit of getting used to. Now down here, there's a wireless phone charging pad on this side. This is just a holder, and then you can see down here, open this up, there's actually a pretty decent little storage area. It's also in this really interesting like yellow color on the inside with your 2 USB-C charging ports. Your center console area here could be more softly padded, and as you can see, your window controls are located here in the center. Now they are one touch for the driver and the passenger, but what I don't like is there's only one window or 2 sets of window controls, so I have to basically push the rear button there to access the rear windows. Sometimes some brands, like if you double tap it, you can actually access both, or maybe if I push and hold it, it'll let me access both at the same time, and it looks like it doesn't. So really, you have to cycle between the front and the rear windows, which I find to be annoying. It takes getting used to. Your door lock switches here, again, are just a touch sensitive control there, which takes getting used to. And then if I push that open, that's what reveals the cup holders. It actually is really, a cool feature. You can even slide that back, has more of that yellow area here. And you can also pull that out in case you spill coffee, or you can cover it up to reveal your cup holders again. This is a cool feature, but again, it removes the ability for this to open up to allow for some covered storage. There's a little bit of covered storage here. but in general, it's a very unique interior design. The seats, like I mentioned earlier, cool pixel pine color. They are comfortable and supportive. No ventilation function, but at least on longer road trips, I was able to get comfortable in this car, and it also has a comfortable ride quality. Visibility is good. There wasn't a single squeak and rattle in this interior, which really showcases the fantastic build quality that Volvo is showcasing, even though this car, again, was built in China, but now it's built in Belgium. But let's go ahead and hop into the backseat area, and I can show you guys what that space is like. Now, unlike the old C30, this vehicle does have rear doors, but the rear seat space back here isn't what I would say generous. It is pretty usable, however, and you can see if you want to fold down the seats, they do fold down in a 60-40 arrangement and creates a pretty flat load floor, which is nice. The seats, however, do not recline, so keep that in mind if you guys are looking for reclining rear seats. Material quality back here has basically been carried over with a slightly padded material here, the metal door handles, padded area over here with more of that knit inside the door pocket, more of that plastic panel here. And then as you can see, once I get back here, this is basically my driving position at 5'7". Volvo says there's around 32 inches of legroom back here. 32 inches is not a lot, but at the same time, it's surprisingly decent considering how small this car is. The floor is basically completely flat. There's a little removable piece here where you can access some storage. Your rear window controls are located back here with its own separate switches and 2 USB-Cs and a little slot here where you can, I guess, insert a phone. You have 2 storage cubbies in each of the door pockets with more of that banana yellow on the inside lining that. Shockingly though, there is no rear seat armrest, which would have been nice. And the headrest back here, they do adjust, but no grab handles. As you can see on the roof panel, you do have some LED map lighting, and then this big glass roof definitely helps to make this interior feel a little bit more open and airy. And then in terms of the headroom space, you can see surprisingly good thanks to that glass roof. At 5'7", I have a solid maybe 5 inches of additional clearance, 4 inches of additional clearance. I can get back here and sort of cross my legs, but again, the seats are close, so keep in mind if you guys are looking for more space for your family, the larger EX40 or the upcoming EX60 may be more to your liking, but this is still pretty usable considering the size of this car on the outside. So sadly, I never got a chance to actually drive the old Volvo C30 hot hatch. But remember, that was like an entirely different kind of machine versus what we're driving now. That car had right around 240 horsepower. It was front wheel drive only. It was offered with a 6-speed manual transmission. However, from the reviews I read on it, the manual wasn't really a great transmission, and people kind of said it had a lot of torque steer and had a little bit of a stiff ride. So it's interesting now that we're driving around in this electric SUV that also has some pretty impressive numbers. This car is the quickest accelerating Volvo ever produced. Volvo says like 0 to 60 is like around 3.5 seconds or so, which is kind of crazy to think something like this can be that quick. But it also comes, of course, with dual motor all-wheel drive, which is something that you could never get in the old C30. This car is also an incredibly small vehicle. It's like literally 8 inches shorter than something like a Volvo XC40, or a Subaru Crosstrek is also 8 inches longer than this vehicle. So it's definitely a small car. It's actually smaller, shorter than the old C30 hot hatch. But this model is a little bit, it's lifted up. It's got all-terrain tires. It still has roughly the same weight at around 4,100 pounds. We're starting off this review at 98% state of charge. It was showing 210 on a full charge, but let's go ahead and see what we get here 0 to 60 wise. I have the drive mode here in performance, and we're on our usual stretch of road. We'll brake torque it. Ooh, ho, 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 ho. My God, this thing is fast. 0 to 60 in 3.44 seconds there. 3.4, the last EX30 that I tested, the non-cross country, did it in like 3.26. So the all-terrain tires are definitely slowing the vehicle down a little bit, but still, this is ridiculously fast. In fact, it doesn't even need to be this quick, but if you want the cross-country variant of the car, you basically are going to be getting the 422 horsepower dual electric motor setup, because they don't offer the single motor rear drive variant on this particular trim, which makes sense, although I wouldn't be too upset if Volvo introduced a detuned version of this powertrain. It just has probably too much power for most people. It doesn't really need this much power. Tunnel vision, 3.44 there. So that's with it more going slightly uphill. we'll try it up ahead one more time and see if we can get a slightly faster time. But yeah, if you guys are coming from your old C30, this car is going to absolutely smoke it, demolish it. I mean, you could pull up next to a Toyota Supra, a BMW M2, M3, or M4, and maybe even like a Chevrolet Corvette, and just blow the doors off of them at the light, especially if they're not paying attention when the light turns green. So that's what's kind of the beauty about this car. It's a dorky little, super small, subcompact SUV hot hatch thing that has supercar levels of acceleration. When you put your foot down, you can literally feel the front end lift up, and the car just feels like it's blasting off into outer space. It's ridiculous how fast this car is, which is phenomenal. Now, in terms of the rest of the ride and handling dynamics, the steering in the EX30 is definitely sporty. It's quick, sharp, it's direct, not much in terms of heft or feedback, but the car feels very playful. It feels like a car that can easily, have some fun in your favorite back roads on some corners. Although if you want a more, I guess, buttoned down version of the car, you're not going to go for the cross-country variant. The extra 0.7 inches of ground clearance is barely felt in this car. It feels like I'm sitting up a little bit higher compared to the regular EX30, which that car feels more like a hot hatch to me. But still, 7.7 inches of ground clearance is not a lot for a vehicle that has a cross-country badging. It does, however, have skid plates. This car's ride is also very comfortable. The 18-inch wheels with the meaty all-terrain tires definitely make the ride feel even softer, which I greatly appreciate, because a lot of EVs, they feel heavy, they feel stiff in their ride and handling, but this car feels more soft, which I really appreciate. I think Volvo buyers are also going to really appreciate as well. This car does come with 2 levels of 1-pedal drive. On high, it does deliver the, the regen braking that you're expecting, and it also will bring the car down to a stop, which is nice. You can put it on a low setting, which the low setting isn't quite as aggressive, but this isn't also as aggressive as GM's 1-pedal drive, which I think is too much, especially if you have it on high. The 1-pedal drive, as you can see, does bring you down to basically a full stop, or at least it brings you down almost to a full stop, and then you have to use the brake. But let's try another run here. Oh, 3.41 seconds there. So we'll take that as our best time. It's around 0.1 second off, 2 seconds off the regular EX30. But still, this is unbelievably fast. I mean, if you're going to compare this car to like a Hyundai Ioniq 5 XRT, that car is going to take roughly an extra second to a second and a half, 0 to 60, which I really do think that Volvo could shave the power down or give this car a bigger battery pack just to give it more range, because I think people would rather have the extra range, but that's just me. On a full charge, I was saying earlier, this car only shows 210 miles of range. In my week's worth of testing, I drove this car a fairly good amount in temperatures that varied from the low 30s up until the mid 40s. I got around 180 miles of real world range, which is not good. That's, the thing about this car is it's small on the outside. It delivers small numbers for 0 to 60, as in really small as in quick numbers. And it also doesn't have great real world range. This is more of a city car. Now, again, it's rated at 227, but in these conditions, I never got that. The longest range EX30 is the rear drive single motor, rated at 261. Volvo really just needs to put their bigger battery pack from the EX40, which is like 85 kilowatt hours. The range should be around 300 miles for this car, not 227. So that's kind of a problem. Now, the interior, however, is very quiet. The seats are comfortable and they're supportive. The Nordico doesn't really breathe well, but I didn't notice it too much. In these colder climates, the seats are heated, the heat function works well. The head restraints also feel like they're in a good position. For an entry-level Volvo, the seats are still very comfortable. Visibility is good. I can see out of the front, the side, and the rear quite nicely, although the rear window is a little bit on the smaller side. A digital camera rear mirror would be great if Volvo offered it, but they don't on this vehicle. In terms of the infotainment system, you can see this is the 12.4-inch display, oriented in a portrait style. And it looks great. It's very modern, sophisticated. It's very minimalistic. It has that Scandinavian minimalistic design that's premium. I also love the way the CarPlay looks. It is finally wireless for CarPlay and Android Auto. It's quick, snappy. It has Google built in as well, where you can give it voice commands. And it also will talk to you. What I don't like, however, is it's kind of like a Tesla. Your gauge display is located here at the very top. There's no display here behind the steering wheel. You have to get used to that. But if you're used to a Tesla, you're getting to this, and you'll be able to kind of get used to that as well pretty quickly. The ambient lighting in this car, it's almost dark. The sun's going to start to set probably in the next 5 minutes. Looks good. This is kind of the Nordic forest backdrop. As you can see, you can change the ambiance here. Or this is the Nordic twilight. I can go to like the midsummer backdrop, which again changes the way the screen looks there. It even will play music. There's also like a archipelago, which is kind of like a really nice like sunset on the sea. And then there's the forest bath. That beep that you heard is literally the camera telling me, because there's a camera here that watches my face. If I'm not paying attention, it'll yell at me and say that I need to focus on driving. But as you can see, that looks fantastic. It even will play music if you're so inclined to listen to music. It'll play that in the background to kind of go with the ambiance here. As you can hear, it's very soothing. I really like the forest bath actually, with the green ambient lighting and the, again, shut up car, stop telling me to stay focused. I'm trying to talk and just kind of talk and tell you guys what this car is like to drive. But in general, the EX30 Cross Country is definitely, I think, the better option versus the regular EX30. I appreciate the extra ground clearance. I appreciate the extra capability. It's basically still as quick as the regular EX30. But at the same time, I think it looks a hell of a lot better. This car is still a little bit of a dorky, subcompact SUV. It's a little bit too small, I think, for many people, unless you live in an urban environment. If this is for the kind of money that Volvo is asking, a lot of people, I think, will just be happier with a bigger SUV. But the cool thing about this car is it has, an unexpectedly upscale, minimalistic Scandinavian premium interior. It has the acceleration that'll blow the doors off of a lot of supercars. It has really good tech. It just needs more range. It needs a lower price tag. But in general, if you want something that's weird, that's kind of where I kept talking about. This car definitely feels like the spiritual successor to the old C30 hot hatch. Now, a week prior to Volvo dropping off the EX30 Cross Country at my house, I actually had a chance to fly out to Montebello, Canada in Quebec, where the company invited me out to do their winter driving experience with the EX30 Cross Country. And this was an opportunity to drive the vehicle on an ice track on a frozen Ottawa River, which was a new experience for me. The ice, I was told, was apparently like 3 feet thick, so it can obviously support the weight of a vehicle driving on it. But this is also a very eye-opening experience because I had never really driven a vehicle on solid ice. Now, of course, on this track that they had us on, there were some parts where it had a lot of snow. The snow was important because it gave us the necessary traction that we needed to drive the vehicle. And this is where the properties of this being an EV was very impressive. That low center of gravity gave the car a sure-footed feel. The quick steering on the road also translated out onto the ice, and the all-wheel drive system's near perfect 50-50 weight distribution and 50-50 power distribution made this car super easy to fling around on the ice track. We drove around with the stability control on, and it still allowed for a really good amount of slip, but at the same time, it just is so precise in its power delivery, and that's what makes EVs so good in the snow. So once you get past the fact that the range drops when you're in colder climates, the level of traction and controllability of an EV really shines when you drive the vehicle in these kind of conditions. So after spending a full week with the EX30 Cross Country and driving it on the frozen Lake Ottawa River in Quebec, Canada with Volvo, I have to say this vehicle surprised me in many ways. And that starts, of course, with the way this car drives. The dual electric motor powertrain is definitely overachieving. We got 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds, which is just crazy when you consider that most of its rivals are around a second slower versus this vehicle. It very much gives you the vibe of a hot hatch. And if you guys had the old C30, which offered a manual, it was only front wheel drive, this is simply going to blow the doors off of that model and blow the doors off of some unsuspecting sports cars that you might pull up next to at the light. And that's what makes this car so unique. It's a sleeper vehicle that's kind of dorky and spunky on the outside, but it has serious speed that can embarrass a lot of supercars. The ride quality also is not affected. In fact, the cross-country model has an even better ride quality than the regular EX30 thanks to the softer tune of the springs, to the lifted suspension, to those chunky all-terrain tires. As you guys also saw out on the ice, this vehicle definitely has the necessary power and handling and torque delivery characteristics to make this vehicle really good out in the snow. In fact, Volvo is a Swedish company, as you know. They do a lot of winter weather testing. And the all-wheel drive system and the chassis and all the electronics for this car seem to have been solid. Volvo is making some big upgrades in terms of their software, and I also appreciated how they finally have added wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as a feature that was sorely lacking for years, but this new EX30 is definitely, pushing Volvo forward in that department. While the interior is still on the small side, this is a small car. It offers a usable amount of space considering the size of this vehicle. And if you guys really want an urban type car that still has the practicality, this is definitely something that's going to be unique in this segment. Now, in terms of pricing and availability, the EX30 definitely had a slow start in America, and that's because the early versions were built in China. Since then, however, Volvo has moved production to Belgium, which is supposedly going to help them avoid tariffs, but at the same time, this car is more expensive versus when Volvo first promised this vehicle. Because 2 years ago when I was in Milan, Italy, the company said that the base price of this car would come in at under $35,000. They also promised the range to be around 275. Since then, of course, the range figure has dropped, but the price has increased because if you guys want the new single motor rear drive EX30, it starts at a more reasonable $40,345. That's before destination. So it's around $5,000 more versus what Volvo originally promised. Now, if you guys want the dual motor setup, it's going to cost you another $6,000. However, if you guys want the Ultra trim that I'm showing you here, it's only available on or it's only offered on the cross country. There's no base plus trim for this variant. It's going to start at around $49,500. So on paper, it appears that the cross country is $9,000 more than the regular EX30. However, when you spec up an EX30, the regular version with the Ultra trim and the dual motor setup, the price delta is actually only $1,500. So that seems reasonable for Volvo to charge $1,500 more for the cross-country variant, with the addition of the all-terrain tires that my test car has here, which is a pricey $3,500 extra, and the destination charge. It brings the total price of this model to around $53,000, just under $53,000. That's definitely a lot of money. For example, I just tested out the new Subaru Uncharted, which I would view as a competitor for this vehicle, although the Subaru is a little bit bigger, shockingly. It's also not as quick, but it does have more real-world range, because as you guys also saw, the real-world range of this vehicle, that's where Volvo needs to work, is right around 180 miles. That's going to be a problem for a lot of people who plan to take longer road trips. So I'm hoping Volvo will eventually increase the battery size, because something like this really should have over 300 miles of range. And I also think the price needs to be dropped by at least $5,000, because for something that's this small, it is roughly $5,000 to $10,000 more expensive versus some of its rivals. But at the same time, if you guys want something unique, you want something extremely quick, and you want something that's going to be stylish and stand out in a sea of so many unique, egg-shaped crossovers, the EX30 Cross Country definitely should make it to the top of your list. Well, with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my very detailed overview on the brand new 2026 EX30 Cross Country. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.